Hi, today I am reviewing this little part I bought, and what it is it's an adapter that will allow you to put an FCR39 Carb in your DRZ-400s or 400SM, a DRZ, or I'm sorry, an FCR39 Carb without a removable intake bell. The second thing that it does, which is awesome, is it allows you to keep your stock S or SM airboot, which that alone pays for the cost of this item. You know, the S or the this is an E airboot, but the one that comes in, and if you're doing the one with the if you're doing the FCR39 with the removable intake bell, then you need to get the E airboot, which is about $90 or so, if I recall correctly. I think it's about $90 if you were to go to Suzuki and buy this thing. This was, I believe, $35 plus shipping, and it eliminates the need to get this, and it opens up your options because now you can use an FCR39 that doesn't have a removable intake bell. So let me see if I can get a little bit more in detail for the people that don't know what I'm talking about here. The product, well, first let me explain what who makes a product. This product is made by a guy named Jeff Allgeyer from Allgeyer Performance. He designed this thing to kind of solve a problem and open up a lot more options. And personally myself, after dealing with this for the past few weeks, trying to get one of these in my bike, this thing is just awesome. I mean, I wish I would have known about this before I started on all the hassle, but it doesn't have a lot of coverage, I guess you would say, which is kind of partially why I was making the video. I mean, I'm no big time YouTuber or nothing like that, but I was like, hey man, I'll make a video for you. Hopefully, put it in the Thumper Talk thread where, he started all this and kind of, started this whole deal. And, and then he also has a website as well. And I will, I told him he can, put the video on his website. It'll be a video just kind of reviewing this. I'll show, it going on the bike and, all that stuff, and, kind of explain where I was at, and hopefully all this will make more sense to the people that are unfamiliar with all of this process. So let me see if I can, starting out, I'll see if I can explain it right here before I even, I'll show you my bike and stuff like that. So, so the basics is, and he kind of laid it out right here. So if you have a DRZ-400, S or SM, and you don't have the FCR carb on it already, you didn't buy the bike with it or whatever, and you want to go with an FCR carb, kind of the main available options right now is you can well, let me explain the differences in the FCR carb. The FCR carb itself is kind of the same deal all right here. The actual workings of the carb are the same, and they put this carb on all kinds of different bikes and quads and different deals, but they have different versions of it. So like this version right here is off of a DRZ-400E, so the DRZ-400E and K at some point, I'm not exactly positive on the years, came with an FCR carb, but it was, especially here in California, it's for their only their off-road versions, because we're all super stupid on all our smog junk. So the normal one that came with it is the Mikuni constant velocity 36. I think that's what I think it's constant velocity, whatever. The Mikuni CV36 is like the common carb that's on there, and it's a cool carb, but if you want power and stuff like that, you gotta eventually go to the FCR. I mean, it's just such a great upgrade. I mean, it's almost the best upgrade that you'll do. And I mean, a lot of people say it is. So far on my bike, it's been the best upgrade that I've done. I mean, as far as like noticeable difference, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think it does technically give you a little bit more power, but it's just a different feel of the bike. I mean, it's just instant throttle response. It makes the bike feel like an off-road bike versus a on-road bike. The Mikuni's great for just like smooth cruising. It's just like a super reliable carb. Like, you know, your bike just starts up perfectly, you know, and it's all good, but you can really feel it lack when you're like off-road and stuff like that. You know what I mean? You know, you hit the throttle and it has like a little bit of a delay before it, you know, kicks in. And you know, I've done a fair amount of off-road riding with it so far, and you kind of get used to it. Like, you want to hit something, so you hit the throttle a little early, and then finally it kicks on. But it's just limited. I mean, if you want power, you're gonna eventually probably want to go with an FCR. It can kind of be confusing to a lot of people, and you know, it seems like it's a huge amount of work, but it's really not, you know, too complicated. Thanks to, you know, honestly, thanks to a lot of people that have done all the research and done all this stuff and figured out a lot of things. I mean, you know, that's, you know, sometimes we take it for granted that we just go on the internet and look up stuff and it's all there, you know what I mean? It's, you know, but anywho, so basically, you know, Jeff kind of laid it out here. He kind of shows you the different versions of the FCR carbs. Now, when most people do an FCR carb in a DRZ-400 S or SM, what they're looking for is an FCR carb that has a removable intake bell. And that's what you, with the pictures, you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. But this bell here just basically disassembles from the carb, and they sell different sizes, different lengths, and they have all kinds of different little things that, you know, make this easier or make it able to fit in your DRZ-400. Now, what Jeff did here is actually, you know, I would say, you know, pretty ingenious, and it's going to be a big help to people that want to do this and don't want to spend the money, the extra amount of money, because these go for a lot more money. The ones with the removable intake bells, they go for a lot more money than these, the FCR carbs that have the fixed intake bells. You can't take these off. They just are what they are. And then you got to try and make it work. If you want to try and put one of these into a DRZ, you got to try and make it work. And I mean, I did it, but it's just not any kind of a clean swap. It's just, you know, I didn't know this thing existed. So, you know, after the second time I tried to get mine in and get it all fitted in there, I found this and I was like, awesome. You know, it was $35. I bought it in like 10 seconds. Because it's just, I call it the missing link. So, you know, not getting too far off track, basically, if you find an FCR carb with a removable intake bell, it's a fairly simple process. I mean, you got to jet your carb right. There's all kinds of information on that. Jeff even gives you, you know, the kind of the proper jetting information in his little packet. But you can find this jetting all over, you know, and it kind of, you know, goes through with, you know, what mods you have on your bike and stuff like that. You know, what your elevation is, and you can find the proper jetting info. So, you know, if you found one of these, basically you'd have to buy some jets, the proper jets for your bike and your elevation that you're at, what mods you have. You would need intake boot that would go right here in between the carb and your engine, because the stock carb is, I can't remember if it's smaller or bigger, but it's not the right size. The intake boot that, I call it intake boot, I'm sorry, it's not. It's an intake manifold, technically. It's a little rubber grommet or whatever, rubber intake manifold. It's a different size on the Mikuni carb, and it won't match up. So you got to go to Suzuki, or if you can find one online, whatever. You got to buy the one that's for the DRZ-400E intake manifold. And that's the first part that you got to get. I think that's like $20 or $30. Don't quote me on that exactly, but it's just a little rubber. I guess this one kind of looks like it has it on there already, but it's just a little adapter piece that adapts the FCR carb to the bike. The second thing you would want to get is, assuming you went with the original intake bell or the removable intake bell, you would have to get, if you had a 400S or 400SM, your intake boot that goes in between the carb and your airbox isn't going to be the right size. The FCR intake bell is actually smaller than the original Mikuni one. The Mikuni bell kind of comes up like that, and you need to change the this little intake boot to DRZ intake boot. You can get it at Suzuki, but I think this thing alone is like $90. This one came with the carb deal that I bought, but I believe they're about $90. So that alone, this allows you to use your original S or SM intake boot. So the E intake boot alone is about twice as much money as this little guy costs right here. So I mean, you immediately save money right off the bat. So anyways, so you would need that boot, and then you can, a good option is to, or I don't know, when I bought mine it came with E cables. I kind of struggled with getting the E cables on there. I hear you can use the S cables too. I haven't tried that out myself, but I hear you can just use the S cables that you already have on your bike, as far as throttle cables, I mean. The E cables, I thought it was just going to be like, oh, perfect, it's going to work out perfect, but I kind of struggled with those too, just routing them. I routed them on one side, and it was like I had all this extra slack. I routed them on the other side of the bike, and it almost didn't have enough slack. And I mean, we'll see what happens now, because once I put this in, it's going to change the position. Should be like that anyway. It's going to change the position of where the carb is in there, so it might give me a little bit more play on those cables, because right now I have it routed on the original side that the S cables were on, and it feels like it's really tight. Almost if I turn my handlebars, it'll kick the throttle up a little bit, which is just not, not good to go. So so when we're talking about money wise on all this, what makes this thing such a beauty is, let's just say you wanted to do an FCR carb and you didn't have this available to you. You're going to have to find an FCR with a removable intake bell. You're looking at that alone. Of course, when you're looking at used carbs, you're going to always get a deal, but on average, these are going for like $400 or $500, because basically people figured out like, hey, this thing's got the removable intake bell. It's much more valuable than the ones that don't have a removable intake belt, because these are going to be more application specific as far as specific bikes they got to go on, whereas these you can adapt them and change them and go to different bikes. So these with a removable intake belt seem to go for like $400 or $500, whereas the ones with the fixed intake belt that you can't change, those seem to go for anywhere. I've seen them as cheap as like $150, $200. So that alone, I mean, you're already cutting the cost of your carb in half. Let alone you don't have to buy the E intake boot. I mean, it's just money savings all around. I mean, once I found out I had this, I was actually a little bit bummed, because the carb that I bought is one with a fixed intake bell. But the guy I bought it off of eBay. He had it on his SM, and he said he had it on his SM, and it was just, he's like, yeah, I was able to make it fit. I didn't need anything extra special or whatever. And I believe him, because I got it to fit on mine, but the way that that I got it to fit on mine, it's just not good. It's I got my intake boots stretched. I got, you'll see, I'll get more into that in a minute. I'll go out to the bike after I describe, or after, I finish with this here. But, this right here should solve all my problems, make for a clean installation. And, it should just make this go a lot smoother, and I should just have a nice installation and solve a lot of my problems. I wish I would have found this before, because I would have saved money. I paid, I think, I was in a bidding war on eBay for my little kit, and I ended up paying $600, which was overspent. I could have probably done the whole thing for about $300 if I would have known this thing existed. So, when I talked to Jeff, I talked to him, I called him because I had a question about it, but I said, hey, do you mind if I'll make a video for you? I'll put it in the Thumper Talk forum, or the Thumper Talk thread that he started, and give you the link to the video. You can put it on your website, or whatever. I'm not no big YouTuber or nothing. Obviously, I'm not the best video maker, but just trying to help people out and give them some better options. I mean, we all, or most of us, want FCR carbs on, so this thing should help us a lot. So anyways, and then kind of just looking at the item, it's I believe cast aluminum. I think he made a mold and then he cast the aluminum in it, but he has these little set screws, and basically you're going to fit this onto the carb on the intake side of the bell, and everyone's different. So he makes this to a specific size, and then you're going to have to kind of do your own work to get it to fit onto your bell good. I mean, if your bell's too big, you know, just slightly too big, then you might have to take a little bit off, maybe with some sandpaper or something, and then which would actually be kind of more preferable, because then this thing should kind of just press on there nice and tight, and then it has these little set screws to lock it in place. Now, if your intake bell is a little bit too small, because they're going to vary between carb, you know what I mean? It's not like Keane's making them all exactly the same. If your intake bell is too small, then he recommends putting in some a little bit of silicone sealant. You know, putting it, you know, from what I gathered, he was saying kind of around the intake bell, putting this on, and then screwing it down with the screws. And we'll get more into that, because I'll show you me actually fitting this to my carb. But yeah, you know, the brief summary. Oh, and you know, like Thumper Talk does sell a kit for, you know, the carb with the removable intake bell, and it's, you know, it's a brand new carb. You know, it's all good. If you got, it's $750, and it comes with everything you need to install it. You know, it's like you just buy the kit, put it on. You know, you're good to go with a brand new carb. But, you know, once again, it's $750. You know, it's kind of hard to justify to the missus, you know, and if you know what I mean. This little guy can potentially let you do all of this for half the cost, if not maybe even less than half the cost. Oh, I would say less than half the cost. So, you know, there's also another place out there. I didn't really look too much into them, but it's the Kean/FCR.com, and they sell like a rebuilt carb with a removable intake bell, and supposedly everything you need to put it on too. I don't know anything about them, but that one's even $500. So this still beats it by a good margin. So anyway, we'll end this here, and we will. I'll show you kind of what I got going on my bike right now, and why this thing is even, you know, coming on, or, you know, why I'm going to be putting this on and all that stuff. So stay tuned. All right, so here we are, looking at the bike here. Kind of show you what I got going on so far. Basically, what I did is I bought a carb off a guy on eBay. This is a FCR carb off of a KTM quad, I guess. And he said he had it on his SM. He basically gave me, with the little kit, he gave me the carb, the E-intake boot, or I'm sorry, the E-intake manifold, the E-airboot, and, you know, some clamps and stuff like that. It was already all jetted properly, so you know, that was all good. So, and he said that he had it on his SM already, so he was able to make it work. And like I think I said it in the last video, I believed him, because I was able to make it work too. But I'll explain to you, you know, what the problem with it is, and some of you are going to look at this and just be like, oh yeah, that's definitely a problem. But I was like, I've only had this on here for about a week, and I was like sketchy. I didn't ride it off road. I kind of rode it to work a couple times on the road, but I just wasn't comfortable with it, and I'll explain why, and I'll explain where this piece is going to come in here, the Allgeyer Performance piece, or basically whatever, his little adapter piece. Okay, so just to show you that obviously it does work, I'll explain what I got here, and I'll fire the bike up. Okay, so what I got here is the FCR carb with the E intake manifold going to the head. Initially, this is the second time I had put it on. The first time I had put it on, I used the E intake boot that he gave me, and it's shorter. So it was even like more of like a, I guess you would call it a stretch fit. I had to like stretch these things out to seal off the carb. And it just kind of puts the carb at a funky angle as well. I mean, once it's in there and all tightened up, it's just kind of at a funky angle. It's just not ideal. You know what I mean? It's not a proper way. I mean, if you look closely, I had to pull the E intake manifold off a little bit. There's another little knob in here where it is grabbing properly and it's sealed, and it's kind of, you know, barely hanging on to this bell back here. It's probably like right about there. It is all sealed and the bike's actually running, and it runs fairly well. I mean, we'll see how it runs with the new piece, because there's also another problem here is right now this is the original S intake boot. When I did it with the E intake boot, it was even more stretched and barely hanging in there. And I spent hours just messing with this thing, trying to move it just to the right area, just to try and it's already kind of a tight fit in here. So you don't have a lot of options to move this thing around, you know what I mean? It's like the throttle wheel hits the frame, and it's just, it took a lot of like finicking around with to try and get it in there, just where everything was clamped down. It had enough room, and it just, it's not good. It's not like a nice fit, you know what I mean? So initially I used the E intake boot, took it back out. I did a little bit more work on the carb, went to put it back in with the E intake boot, and I couldn't even get it to seal properly again without it getting all jacked up. So I had this idea in my head. I was like, you know, screw this. I'm just going to put on the S intake. First, I tried making my own adapter little bell pieces with like PVC and this little piece of metal, and it just was not happening. It just, you know, I bought some rubber, you know, hose clamp stuff from Home Depot, and it just was not happening. So I was like, screw this. The S intake boot is a little longer, so I was like, at least I can get it in there, but it's a lot bigger back here. So, I mean, there's a significant gap you can see when you try and hook that S air boot onto the bell. You're like, holy moly. But I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to put it on, and I'm going to screw it way down and just clamp it on there, you know, as tight as I can get it, and hopefully it sucks up all that gap and there's no little, you know, I'm hoping that there's no little leaks, you know, around that, you know, especially before I go off-road. That's where I was just kind of like, I got to find a different option. I don't want to, you know, it's one thing to ride it on the street, but I don't want to be taking this thing off-road and there's some little gap that I don't know about, and I'm getting a little bit of dirt in there, and it's all going in my engine, and, you know, so I just needed to find, you know, a better option. But just to kind of show you that it does work, you know what I mean? You know, I'll show it to you right here. But oh, that's the other thing I was going to mention too, is when you notice with the E intake boot, there's this little channel that goes down to the pilot air jet and the main air jet that's like built into the E intake boot that the S intake boot doesn't have. And I thought it was going to be a problem, and who knows if it is, because, you know, it seems to run fine, but you know, it's just not right. You know, and it's like, it's already a little bit that you got to mess with this carb a little bit to get it all kind of dialed into your bike. So I'm like, you know, always in the back of my mind, I'm like, do I have a little air leak here, or is it because I don't have that little channel thing? The Allgeyer adapter piece, you know, solves all those problems. So it's just going to be whatever. But I mean, the bike does run decent. I rode it around. It's obviously a huge intake with an FCR carb, but it's just a little bit more finicky. It's hard to, you know, compare to that. And some guys say, yeah, I can get, you know, you can get this thing just as smooth and reliable as that original carb that came on it. But that thing's just like a, you know, it just makes the bike like a Cadillac. You know what I mean? It's just super easy to start. It's, you know, you dial it in and you're good to go, and it's just, you know, good to go. But you know, so I'll show you that the bike starts up fine, and I fired it up a few minutes ago and warmed it up, so that way it's, you know, a little warm right now, but I'll show you right here. So we'll fire it up real quick. Little higher throttle. Yeah, just that. But yeah, it's, you know, but yeah, I mean, you can see obviously that the bike fires up, and it runs. I mean, it runs good. There's a couple of weird things that happened when I was riding, but for the most part, it, you know, it ran pretty good. You know, didn't really have any problems. But I'd like to just get it done right, then dial it in right, and then just have it to where it just works, you know, real good, or it's the best that I can get it. So I'll kind of show you what I had to deal with here. So we'll kill it here. Let me take off some stuff. So partially you can already see here, it was even worse with the E intake boot. With the E intake boot, it was so much shorter to try and stretch it over here to get it here. I had to like pry this piece off the air box, and it was only hanging half on the air box. And I was confident it was sealed, but once again, it's just not right. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't, I want this bike to be good, and like I'm not worried about it. You know what I mean? So I had to like pry this off, and sometimes you got to put it at a different angle to get it, to get it on. Once I put the S air boot back on, obviously I got more bite on this, which made me feel more comfortable, but it's pretty much got this gap all the way around. I know you're seeing the hole in my air filter, but this is just a dust cover. I got a K&N air filter underneath it. And my buddy was looking at it. He's like, "You got a big hole in your filter." And I'm like, no, it's just an extra dust cover filter over the original K&N air filter. But I kind of want to get rid of that thing anyway and just go with the Uni. But anyways, off track. But yeah, so going back to that Allgeyer Performance adapter boot, it goes in between here, and it's going to solve all this, not having enough length here. Also, another thing it's going to do is, because you can only push the carb back so far here, because you start running into you can kind of see it up in there, but the throttle wheel area starts running into the frame. So it's like, not even like, hey, why don't you just push the carb back farther? Number one, you're even getting more stretched out here. But the carb almost can't even go back farther because, well, it can't go back farther because the throttle wheel starts hitting the frame, without denting in your frame and all that stuff. It's just like, holy moly. But, anyways, so yeah, point being is this little piece should just be a little, godsend here to get this all fitted, fit in here nice and tight too. Also, just look at the way the carb's positioned right now. I mean, my choke's like in the way of, my petcock here. It's like I can't even put my thing over to the reserve because it runs into the choke. You know what I mean? It's just not good. You know what I mean? I want a nice fit. I want it to, fit properly, nice, not be worried about it, and all of those things. So anyways, yeah, that's roughly it, as far as what I got going on, right here. So now, I'm going to go to taking this out. I mean, there's plenty of videos out there showing you how to remove your Mikuni and all that stuff. So I probably won't get too in depth on that. I'll link a video that I found that shows you how to do this FCR carb swap. Very thorough, very, very thorough video showing you how to do the FCR carb swap. And this dude did an awesome video. It's about an hour long, and he kind of just goes through all his little tips and tricks, which I used a lot of. The guy's a really funny guy too. I was laughing at half the stuff he was saying. But yeah, anywho, so I'll link to that if you're like, hey, how do I even put an FCR carb in this thing? It's basically you're just removing stuff, pulling out your Mikuni, and then disconnect a few things to give you as much room as possible. I mean, a lot of people act like it's like you're trying to drop a 454 big block in a Toyota Prius or something. It's not that big of a deal, but it is tighter than the Mikuni. But once again, hopefully with this new piece, it just makes it even easier, to do all of this. So I might show a little bit of it, if I come into anything that seems like it's valid to this particular piece in this installation. But for the most part, I'm assuming it's going to be like doing the FCR with the removable intake bell. So yeah, so sit tight, and I'll get back to you on all that. And once again, I'll try and put time frames in here, like if this is whatever, hey, if you want to go to this part, just fast forward to this area. If you want to go to this part, fast forward to this area, and whatnot. So all right, sit tight. All right, so we're back again here. I went ahead and stripped down the bike. I mean, it's like I've done this so many times now. It's actually, the more you do this, the easier it gets. It just gets really quick, dude. I think I had this thing stripped down and ready to go in like probably less than 5 minutes. It's just, I also have my, wherever I put it, my little, excuse the mess in this dirty old garage, but you also have my little electric ratchet. I love this thing. Little plug for the Milwaukee electric ratchet, but freaking love this thing. It's just a dream when you're working on stuff. I mean, I work on a lot of cars and stuff too, so I mean, this thing's just a beauty. But anywho, so made it for a nice little quick little tear down. I kind of started. I was gonna just get the carb out and all that stuff, but one little trick I wanted to show too is, you know, basically we're gonna disconnect this carb and we're gonna pull it out this way. And I don't need to pull it all the way out of the bike and, like, you know, get it on the workbench. I don't think I do yet. I mean, if I do, I will. But I'm hoping I can kind of just get it out here, fit our little adapter piece on, and then put it back in. I don't need to really work on the carb. I had already adjusted the accelerator pump. It's got the right jets in it, all that stuff. But one trick I wanted to show you to kind of, you know, save you a little bit of time and effort is sometimes when you're thinking, like, your throttle cables are real short, so it's like, you know, you'll go to disconnect them on the other side over here, and, you know, it's fairly easy, but, like, I already have these adjusted properly, so I'd rather just disconnect them up here. So I already pulled the screws out. I stopped halfway through because I wanted to show you guys. So I'm just going to disconnect them, you know, at the handlebars. It's easier to put it all back together when you disconnect them at the handlebars. And then, you know, once you pop these little babies out, you know, then you can pull on those cables and stretch it out. So now I got these cables disconnected. Take these and put them in my little parts bucket so I don't lose them. And then now, you know, you got all this play. You can pull down on your cables and you can, you know, you can get this thing out. Marty, I'm the king of misplacing tools and parts and everything. Let me see where I put my dang screwdriver. Sheesh. Oh, here it is. Okay, so now we will start to pull this carb out of here. So I'll go ahead and start on these. I'm just going to loosen all these up. Make sure I got them all nice and loose. I know I tried doing this so many times. I initially had the original Suzuki, you know, clamps, but I did it so many times and was screwing around with it so much that they got all tweaked and all out of whack. So I ended up just getting these regular old clamps that you can get at Lowe's or Home Depot. You know, eventually I'll probably get the right ones again and put them on just for, you know, clean sake or whatever, I guess. But I mean, these are going to work fine. So we're just going to disconnect this. I mean, you'll see how loose all this is. A couple other things, you know. So basically what I did to get to this point is I, you know, took off the seat, took off the gas tank, you know, took off the radiator fins or whatever you want to call them. I forgot what those things are called, the things that channel the air through the radiator. Took off your side panel here, took off the side panel on the other side. You disconnect your, I think this is called the rectifier. You disconnect that so you can kind of move it out of the way. Sometimes we'll see. I might loosen that up, but we'll see. If I need to. If not, I'll whatever. And then the little charcoal canister box deal on the other side, I loosened that up too. But we'll go from here and we'll see. We'll see what we got. So let me continue to loosen this up. But yeah, it's pretty easy. It's, you know, especially got a little tool and you've done this several times, all this stuff should come apart. Let me loosen these cables up so I can kind of get them out of the way. But yeah, I think, oh, look how loose it is. See that? Yeah. See, when I was talking about the gap here, look at that. You know what I mean? I was just barely on there. So this is where our piece is going to come in here. It's going to mount to here and just give me a lot more, you know, bite on there and have everything line up. I'm hoping have everything line up better. When you're doing all this, let me put some more tape on this thing. But, you know, to protect your frame, I just took a little pry bar and I just wrapped it in electrical tape. Just kind of protect the paint on your frame because you're going to pry a little bit against this to get some room to get this puppy out of here. Alright, so I just put a little bit more electrical tape. Just get this sucker in there. You know, don't be afraid to just get it, push it. You know what I mean? You could potentially hurt something, but I'd say the chances are slim. I was wailing on that damn thing. That dang thing, sorry, trying not to cuss in the video, but okay, so now I'm off. Now I can take my, I'll just go ahead and take all this off for right now. This thing can be on there pretty freaking tight. Okay, so now, now I got room. And I can play with this deal a little bit. So, yeah, here's your FCR carb. Like I said, this one's off a KTM. What I thought was weird, because I don't know a lot about these. I just really, my buddy has one, but he did the slant style. He got a good deal on an E-carb, off, a slant style E-carb. So his was a little different. But like on mine, most of them have like, this is your pilot air jet. That should be like 100. And then this one is your I think it's your pilot main air jet. Well, mine doesn't have one, so I think it's a fixed, I'm assuming it's a fixed air jet size. I mean, there's not even threads in there for you to like screw one in, but a lot of the FCR carbs have both. You know what I mean? That you can adjust. So that one is, you can take it out and change it if you want, but they, I think everything I've seen always recommends 100. And then this one they recommend a 200. So I'm assuming, or I'm hoping that, it's just made into the bell at 200. But so let me go get that piece. I think I brought it out here. Thought I did. Somewhere in my messy old garage. And then we'll show you what we're dealing with as far as fitting it. Let me look. Oh yeah, here it is. But here's some of the junk I was trying to make to kind of make my own piece. I mean, I made a few pieces of PVC to like try and, this one the dude gave me. He was like, hey, if you need this, you can try and use it, but it's just, not happening. I mean, this thing is just a beauty. You can see these two holes right here are going to line up with your air. Oh, ooh, that is loose. So, which, like he said, number one, the dude before me already ground off his little intake bell. So on mine, it's loose, which is fine. You know what I mean? I'm just going to do my set screws to get it, all lined up, and then, I'll probably put some RTV, or not RTV, whatever, the silicone, the high temp silicone sealant stuff. So I'll probably load it up pretty good. He was saying to put it around the bell here. Maybe I'll just actually just put it in here, and then, then get those set screws. Ooh, maybe I do need to pull this out a little bit farther so I can get to the set screws on the side, and then you can kind of see how you're going to line that up. But now you're kind of seeing what this thing is actually doing here. It's going to extend my bell so that way it fits into my boot better. Let's get that out of here. It's going to extend the bell because it's not a removable one. It's going to extend the bell so that way it can fit into my air boot better. And yeah, so yeah, ooh, that puppy is loose. He also recommended too using some weather stripping, like if you didn't want to use the RTV around here, to get some like 3M weather stripping. I'm almost inclined to just do that, because versus get all that RTV, I mean it's going to be a lot because this is fairly loose. It would almost, man, I might just do that. I might just go with the weather stripping like he was saying, because there's a lot of play here. And this isn't the fault of Jeff at Allgeyer. I mean, like, these are all different, so he can't make this specific for each carb. On top of that, the dude that owned this before me, he did his own little, tweaking to try, and so he sanded this down and kind of grinded it. I don't know what he did, but he was trying to make stuff happen too, so he may have, taken off more. I don't even know what this thing looked like originally. It might have had like a bigger lip that this would have slid on nice. So, I just wanted to clarify, this isn't a problem with the product that we're talking about here. This is just what you're going to have to deal with each FCR carb. You know what I mean? You're going to have to figure it out per carb. Maybe yours is going to be a little tight and you need to sand it down a little bit. I would honestly kind of would preferred that. I kind of preferred that mine was a little bigger, so it just fit on there nice and snug. Or it might just be loose. But the set screws are going to suck it up, and I'm assuming what you're going to do is there's 4 of them. You're going to adjust these set screws so that way it lines up. Obviously the holes line up, but also so that it's going to line up nice and perfect. Like right here, when I get it lined up nice and dialed in perfect, it's a beautiful fit. I mean, it just smooth transition right into the carburetor, you know, once you get it dialed in. So I think I might go run and see if I can find some weather stripping, because that just might be a better option for my particular application right now. So sit tight. Let's